I am Maya Patel, 31 years old, and for the past decade, I've been living a double life. On the surface, I'm the family disappointment, the unmarried daughter who chose art over a stable career, who embarrasses my traditional Indian American family at every gathering. What they don't know is that I've been secretly funding their entire lifestyle while they've spent years telling me I'm a failure. That all changed at my cousin Priya's wedding, when my own family decided to humiliate me in front of 300 guests. I simply smiled, stood up, and said three words that changed everything: I'll stop paying. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. If my story resonates with you, please hit subscribe because what happened next taught my family a lesson they'll never forget. Growing up in the Patel household meant one thing: success was measured by how well you followed the predetermined path. Our suburban Chicago home was always immaculate, ready for the constant stream of aunties who would drop by unannounced to gossip about whose children were succeeding and whose were bringing shame to their families. My father, Raj Patel, was a respected pharmacist who had built a small chain of 3 pharmacies over 20 years. My mother, Mira, was the perfect immigrant wife, intelligent, hardworking, and obsessed with our family's reputation in the tight-knit Indian American community. From childhood, the expectations were crystal clear. Study hard, get into a good college, choose from the approved careers: doctor, engineer, pharmacist, or lawyer. Get married to a nice Indian boy by 25, preferably one chosen by the family. Have children by 27. This was the blueprint for success, and any deviation was seen as personal failure and family shame. My older sister, Kavya, followed the script perfectly. She became a pediatric surgeon, married Arjun, a cardiologist our parents basically handpicked, and produced 2 beautiful children right on schedule. She was the golden child, the one held up as an example at every family gathering. "Why can't you be more like Kavya?" was the soundtrack of my teenage years. My younger brother Rohan was taking the engineering route, currently in his final year at Northwestern, destined for a software career that would make our parents beam with pride. He was the baby, the favored son, the one who could do no wrong even when he occasionally strayed from the path. Then there was me. From the age of 12, I knew I was different. While Kavya studied pre-med and Rohan tinkered with computers, I was drawing, designing, creating. I filled sketchbooks with logos, illustrations, and digital art that my parents saw as a nice hobby, but certainly not a career path. When I announced my intention to study graphic design at the Art Institute of Chicago, the reaction was swift and brutal. "You want to throw away your education for what?" my father had demanded. "Drawing pictures? How will you support yourself? How will you support a family?" "Art is not a career, beta," my mother added, using the endearment that somehow made the dismissal sting more. "It's something you do in your free time. Choose something practical." But I was stubborn. I'd inherited the Patel determination, just channeled it in a direction they couldn't understand. I got into the Art Institute on a partial scholarship, took out student loans for the rest, and moved into a tiny studio apartment that my parents refused to visit for the first 2 years. During college, I discovered I had a natural talent for digital marketing and brand design. While my classmates were focused purely on the artistic side, I was fascinated by the business applications. How do you make people stop scrolling and pay attention? How do you build a brand that people remember and trust? How do you turn creativity into profit? I started freelancing in my sophomore year, taking on small projects for local businesses. By my senior year, I was making more money than most of my classmates' part-time jobs combined. But I kept this success hidden from my family, who continued to view my education as an expensive mistake. Graduation day was particularly painful. While my parents attended the ceremony, their disappointment was palpable. The conversations afterward with other families were excruciating. "And what is Maya studying?" other parents would ask politely. "Graphic design," my mother would reply with the tone most people reserved for announcing terminal illnesses. The pitying looks that followed told me everything about how our community viewed my choices. After graduation, I moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park and officially launched Maya Patel Design. I specialized in digital marketing for small businesses, particularly restaurants and retail shops. My bilingual skills and cultural understanding made me particularly effective at helping immigrant-owned businesses connect with both their traditional customer base and younger, more diverse markets. The work was challenging and rewarding, but the family gatherings became increasingly difficult. Every wedding, every Diwali celebration, every birthday party became an opportunity for relatives to ask pointed questions about my career and personal life. Still doing the art thing, my Uncle Curran would ask with barely concealed condescension, "When are you going to find a real job?" Auntie Sunita would wonder aloud. "Your parents must be so worried about your future," cousin after cousin would confide with false concern. The worst part was watching my parents' faces during these conversations. They'd smile tightly and change the subject, but I could see the shame in their eyes. Their daughter, the family disappointment, was living proof that they'd somehow failed as parents. What none of them knew was that my little art business was thriving beyond anything they could imagine. By my second year out of college, I had 15 regular clients and a waiting list. By year 3, I'd hired my first employee. By year 5, Maya Patel Design had become Apex Creative Solutions, a full-service digital marketing agency with 12 employees and offices in Chicago and Milwaukee. The growth was exponential. We specialized in helping traditional businesses transition to digital marketing, and our cultural competency made us particularly sought after by immigrant entrepreneurs who felt overlooked by mainstream marketing agencies. We understood their challenges, spoke their languages literally and figuratively, and delivered results that transformed their businesses. By year 7, we'd caught the attention of major corporations looking to reach diverse markets. We landed contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies and opened a third office in Detroit. Our revenue that year was $4.2 million. Then came the acquisition offer. Digital Dynamics, a multinational marketing conglomerate, offered to buy Apex Creative Solutions for $18 million. After taxes and paying out my employees' profit-sharing agreements, I walked away with $12.8 million. At 29 years old, I was a multimillionaire, and my family had no idea. I could have revealed my success then. I could have moved into a penthouse, bought a luxury car, and shown up to family gatherings dripping in designer clothes. But something held me back. I wanted to see if they could love and respect me for who I was, not what I could give them or how much money I had. Instead, I bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a nice but not ostentatious neighborhood. I told my family I'd gotten a stable position at a marketing firm. I drove a reliable Honda Civic and shopped at Target. To everyone around me, I was still Maya the struggling artist, Maya the family disappointment, Maya the cautionary tale. But behind the scenes, I became their anonymous savior. When my father's pharmacy business started struggling due to competition from large chains, mysterious corporate contracts began appearing. A nearby hospital system suddenly needed specialized prescription services. A chain of senior living facilities required pharmaceutical consultations. These contracts, all filtered through shell companies I'd created, kept the Patel Pharmacy Group afloat and even growing. When Rohan needed help with his student loan payments during graduate school, an anonymous scholarship appeared specifically for students in his program. The Midwest Engineering Excellence Grant covered his remaining tuition and living expenses. When Kavya and Arjun wanted to buy their dream house but were struggling with the down payment, they mysteriously won a first-time homebuyer lottery they didn't remember entering. When my parents' roof needed major repairs after a storm, their insurance claim was supplemented by a community assistance program that covered the full cost of premium materials. For 3 years, I watched my family thrive while continuing to treat me like the irresponsible dreamer who couldn't get her act together. Every family gathering was a masterclass in backhanded compliments and concerned suggestions about my future. "Maya, have you thought about going back to school for something more practical?" my mother would ask during Sunday dinners. "I have a friend whose nephew needs help with his marketing," my father would offer. "It might be good experience for you." "You know, Beta, there's no shame in changing careers," Auntie Sunita would confide during wedding receptions. "It's better to admit a mistake and start over than to waste your whole life on something unrealistic." The irony was suffocating. The woman they were trying to help get her life together was literally keeping their lives together through anonymous financial support. But I endured it, hoping that somehow, someday, they would see me for who I really was. That day finally came, but not in the way I'd hoped. Priya's wedding was supposed to be the social event of the season. My cousin, current uncle's daughter, was marrying the son of a prominent family from Detroit. The guest list included 300 people. The venue was a luxury hotel in downtown Chicago, and no expense was spared. What the family didn't know was that I had anonymously sponsored the entire event. When current uncle's catering business had fallen short of the funds needed for his daughter's dream wedding, a mysterious benefactor had stepped in through a cultural celebration grant I'd established. The flowers, the photography, the elaborate decorations, all funded through my shell companies and presented as prizes from various contests Priya had supposedly won. I spent weeks preparing for the wedding, hoping this time would be different. I'd bought a beautiful but modest lehenga in deep purple silk, had my hair professionally styled, and even splurged on traditional gold jewelry. I wanted to look successful but not ostentatious, put together but not flashy. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Priya looked radiant, and the family seemed genuinely happy. During the cocktail hour, I mingled with relatives I hadn't seen in months, enduring the usual questions about my career and personal life with practiced grace. "Still doing the design work?" asked my father's brother, Vikram uncle. "Business is good," I replied diplomatically. "And still no boyfriend?" pressed his wife, Kavita auntie. "Maya, you're 31 now, time is not on your side." I smiled politely and changed the subject, just as I'd been doing for years. The real trouble started during the reception dinner. I was seated at table 12, relegated to the back with the other unmarried cousins and family friends who didn't quite fit into the main family tables. From my vantage point, I could see my parents at table 3, laughing with Kavya and Arjun at table 2, and Rohan charming everyone at the young professionals' table. The speeches began after the main course. Uncle Curran gave a heartfelt speech about family values and the importance of tradition. Priya's new mother-in-law spoke about the joining of two families. Various relatives offered toasts and blessings. Then came the moment that changed everything. Uncle Vikram, slightly drunk on the premium whiskey I'd unknowingly paid for, decided to give an impromptu speech about the younger generation and family expectations. "You know," he began, swaying slightly as he held the microphone, "marriage is about more than love. It's about responsibility, about building a future, about making your parents proud." He paused to take another sip of his drink, and his eyes landed on me. "Some of our young people understand this," he continued, his voice getting louder. "Look at Kavya, successful doctor, beautiful family, everything a parent could want. Look at Rohan, brilliant engineer, bright future ahead." My stomach dropped as I realized where this was heading. "But some," he said, pointing directly at me, "some still haven't learned what it means to grow up. Still playing with art projects at 31, still single, still worrying their parents sick about their future." The entire room had gone silent. 300 pairs of eyes turned to look at me, sitting frozen at table 12. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, but I kept my expression neutral. Uncle Curran tried to take the microphone back. "Vikram, maybe we should." But my uncle wasn't finished. The alcohol had loosened his tongue completely. "Maya Beta," he addressed me directly, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom, "you're a sweet girl, but when will you stop this nonsense? When will you find a real job, a good husband, and make your parents proud instead of embarrassed?" My mother looked mortified. My father was studying his plate intently. Kavya was shaking her head in second-hand embarrassment, but no one said anything to defend me. No one stood up to tell him he was out of line. They just sat there, letting him publicly humiliate me at a family wedding. Then came the final blow. "Your poor parents," Uncle Vikram continued, his voice full of alcohol-fueled self-righteousness. "They've tried so hard to guide you, to help you, but you're too stubborn to listen. At least Kavya and Rohan never gave them this kind of heartache. At least they understood what family means." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could feel the eyes of 300 people on me, waiting to see how I would react. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed to agree with Uncle Vikram's assessment. But the faces that hurt the most were those of my immediate family, embarrassed, ashamed, wishing they could disappear rather than defend me. I took a deep breath and stood up slowly. My legs felt shaky, but my voice was steady when I spoke. Uncle Vikram, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, you want to talk about what family means. The microphone had been turned off, but the room was so quiet that my voice carried perfectly. You want to talk about making parents proud, about responsibility, about understanding what it means to be an adult. I walked slowly toward the head table where my family sat. Every step felt deliberate, purposeful. Let me tell you about responsibility, I continued, my voice growing stronger. Let me tell you about taking care of family. I reached the center of the room and turned to face the crowd. 3 years ago, when Papa's pharmacy business was failing, who do you think saved it? When those mysterious hospital contracts appeared just in time to keep the doors open. My father's head snapped up, his eyes wide. When Rohan got that full scholarship to finish his engineering degree, the one that came from the Midwest Engineering Excellence Grant, who do you think created that program? Rohan's mouth fell open. When Kavya and Arjun won that home buyer's lottery they didn't remember entering, who do you think arranged that? My sister looked stunned. And this beautiful wedding, I gestured around the elegant ballroom, this celebration that Uncle Curran somehow managed to afford despite his business struggles this year, who do you think paid for it? The room was completely silent now. Uncle Vikram had gone pale and sank into his chair. You want to know what I do for work? I sold my marketing company 2 years ago for $18 million. I am the CEO and founder of the Patel Foundation, which has quietly supported this family for years while you all told me I was a failure. I turned to face my parents directly. Every mortgage payment you thought insurance covered, every business contract that appeared just when you needed it, every scholarship and prize and lucky break this family has experienced in the past 3 years, that was me. The daughter you're embarrassed by. The family disappointment who chose art over a real career. My mother's hands were over her mouth, tears in her eyes. My father looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. So when you ask me about responsibility, about making family proud, about understanding what it means to be an adult, remember this moment. Remember that while you were all lecturing me about my poor choices, I was the one making sure this family stayed financially stable. I paused, looking around the room at all the faces staring back at me in shock. But I'm done now, I said quietly. I'm done hiding my success so you can feel comfortable judging me. I'm done paying for a family that sees me as a burden rather than a blessing. I turned and walked toward the exit, my purple silk lehenga rustling with each step. Maya, my father called after me, finally finding his voice. Maya, wait. But I didn't stop. I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high, leaving behind 31 years of trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. The next morning, I made a series of phone calls that would change everything. Raj, I said to my financial advisor, I want to dissolve all the shell companies supporting the Patel family. Immediately. Are you sure about this, Maya? That's going to create some serious financial disruption for them. I'm sure, and I want to establish the Invisible Success Foundation instead. We're going to help other young entrepreneurs who are being dismissed by their families. What about the pharmacy contracts? Those end next month when they come up for renewal. No extensions. And your brother's scholarship? That was always meant to be a one-time award. He's graduating soon anyway. Maya, are you prepared for the fallout from this? I looked out the window of my home office, at the modest house I'd chosen specifically to avoid seeming too successful. Raj, I've been preparing for this my entire adult life. It's time to stop hiding. Within 48 hours, the consequences began cascading through my family's life like dominoes. The pharmacy business received notices that their largest contracts would not be renewed. The hospital system and senior living facilities had found alternative providers. Dad's business income was about to drop by 60%. Rohan received a letter informing him that his scholarship program had been discontinued. His final semester tuition bill, which he'd assumed was covered, was now due in full. My parents got a letter from their insurance company, clarifying that certain home repairs they thought were covered under their policy had actually been paid by a third-party assistance program that was no longer operating. Uncle Curran's catering business received notice that several lucrative contracts had been terminated due to budget restructuring by the client companies. The calls started within a week. Rohan was first, his voice panicked. Maya, something weird is happening. My scholarship got canceled, and they're saying I owe $15,000 for this semester. Did you know the program that was paying for my school shut down? That's unfortunate, I replied calmly. But you're a brilliant engineer. I'm sure you can figure out a solution. My father called next, his voice strained in a way I'd never heard before. Beta, something is very wrong. The hospital contracts we've had for 3 years, they all got canceled on the same day. They're saying they're restructuring their pharmacy services. This is going to affect our income significantly. That sounds challenging, Papa. Have you considered diversifying your business model? Maya, his voice dropped, at the wedding what you said about helping us, was that true? Which part? All of it, the contracts, the scholarships, the assistance programs, was that really you? I took a deep breath. Yes, Papa, it was really me. The silence stretched between us for nearly a minute. Why? He finally asked. Because I loved you. Because I wanted you to accept me for who I was, not for what I could give you. But I learned something important. You can't buy love, and you can't earn respect from people who are determined not to give it. Maya, if this is true, then we need to talk, as a family. Do we? Because at the wedding, when Uncle Vikram was humiliating me in front of 300 people, none of you said a word. You all just sat there, embarrassed by me, wishing you could disappear. We were shocked. We didn't know how to handle the situation. You could have stood up for me. You could have told him he was wrong. You could have defended your daughter instead of being ashamed of her. Another long silence. You're right, he said quietly. We failed you that night. We've been failing you for years. It was the first time in my adult life that I'd heard my father admit he was wrong about anything. The conversation with my mother was more emotional. She called 3 days later, crying before she even said hello. Maya, Beta, I don't understand what's happening. Your father's business is in trouble, Rohan needs money for school, and everyone is talking about what you said at the wedding. Is it true? Are you really so successful? Yes, Mama, I am. But why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling? Because I wanted you to love me anyway. I wanted you to be proud of me for following my dreams, not just because those dreams made me rich. But we do love you, Beta. You're our daughter. Do you? Because it hasn't felt that way for a very long time. She was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised me. You know what the saddest part is? I always knew you were special. Even when you were little, drawing those beautiful pictures, creating things I could never understand, I knew you had a gift. Then why did you try so hard to change me? Because I was scared. I was scared that your gift wouldn't be enough to support you. I was scared that you would struggle, that people would look down on you, that you would be hurt by choosing such an uncertain path. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. But mostly, she continued, I was scared of what people would think of us as parents if we let you choose something so different from what everyone expected. And now I'm more scared of losing you entirely. That conversation planted the first seed of hope that maybe, just maybe, some relationships could be repaired. My sister Kavia's reaction was the most complex. She called a week after the wedding, her voice a mixture of shock, admiration, and resentment. Maya, I need to understand what happened. Did you really fund my down payment? The lottery we won, that was fake. Yes. And you've been supporting the family business for 3 years. Yes. While we all treated you like you were the failure. Yes. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I feel terrible, but I also feel angry. Angry at me. Yes, no, I don't know. Maya, do you have any idea what it was like being the good daughter all these years? The pressure to be perfect, to never make mistakes, to always set the right example. This perspective had never occurred to me. And now I find out that my little sister, the one I thought was irresponsible and naive, has been more successful than all of us combined. That you were secretly taking care of everyone while we were lecturing you about your life choices. Kavya, I never meant to. It makes me question everything, she interrupted. Were you judging us all this time? Looking down on us while we worried about you? Thinking we were pathetic for needing your help? No, I said firmly. Never. I was never looking down on any of you. I just wanted to be seen and accepted for who I really am. But you weren't being who you really are. You were pretending to be struggling while you were actually wealthy. How is that any different from us pretending to accept you while secretly wishing you were different? It was a fair point, one that made me uncomfortable. Maybe, I admitted, we were all pretending to be people we weren't. The hardest call came from Uncle Vikram, the man whose drunken speech had precipitated the entire revelation. His voice was barely above a whisper when he called 2 weeks after the wedding. Maya Beta, I need to apologize. Uncle, you don't need to. No, I do. What I said at the wedding was inexcusable. I was drunk, but that's not an excuse. I humiliated you in front of the entire family, and I was completely wrong about everything. Uncle Vikram, your parents told me the truth about your business, about how you've been helping everyone. I feel ashamed of myself. I didn't know what to say. An apology was more than I had expected from him. I want you to know, he continued, that what you accomplished is extraordinary. Building a company, selling it for millions, taking care of your family even when they didn't appreciate you, that takes character I don't think I have. Thank you for saying that. Will you consider forgiving a foolish old man who spoke without thinking? The question hung between us. Forgiveness was complicated. His words had hurt deeply, but they had also forced the truth into the light. Uncle, I forgive you, but things have to change. I won't go back to hiding who I am to make others comfortable. I wouldn't ask you to, and Maya, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. 6 months after the wedding, I had established a new life built on radical honesty. I moved into a beautiful penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, complete with a home art studio, where I could pursue painting as a hobby without worrying about monetizing it. I drove the Tesla I'd always wanted and wore clothes that made me feel confident and successful. Most importantly, I threw myself into the Invisible Success Foundation, which provided grants and mentorship to young entrepreneurs from traditional families who felt pressured to abandon their dreams for more practical careers. Our first recipient was Alia Khan, a 24-year-old who wanted to start a sustainable fashion line, but whose Pakistani parents insisted she become a doctor. The foundation provided her with startup capital and connected her with mentors who helped her build a business plan that eventually convinced her parents that entrepreneurship could be both profitable and respectable. The work was deeply fulfilling. Every young person we helped felt like a version of my younger self, getting the support I'd wished for during those difficult early years. My relationship with my family evolved slowly and unevenly. Some connections healed, others remained strained, and a few were permanently altered. My parents were the most motivated to repair our relationship. Dad joined me for monthly coffee meetings where we talked about business, art, and life without the undercurrent of judgment that had colored our interactions for decades. He even started asking me for advice about modernizing the pharmacy business, treating me as the successful entrepreneur I was rather than the disappointment he'd imagined me to be. You know what I realized? He told me during one of our conversations. I was so afraid of you failing that I never considered you might succeed beyond anything I could have imagined. Mom started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to do but had dismissed as impractical. She would show me her watercolor paintings with the same tentative pride I'd felt as a child showing her my drawings. I understand now why you needed to create, she told me. There's something inside you that has to come out, and trying to suppress that is like trying to stop yourself from breathing. Rohan figured out how to pay for his final semester through a combination of part-time work and a legitimate student loan. The experience of having to solve his own financial problems actually strengthened him, and he graduated with a deeper appreciation for money and hard work. I'm glad the scholarship got canceled, he admitted to me at his graduation dinner. I needed to learn how to handle adversity on my own. You can't grow if someone else is always catching you when you fall. He got an excellent job at a tech startup and started his own side business developing apps for small retailers. The entrepreneurial spirit, it seemed, ran in the family. Kavia's relationship with me remained complicated. She struggled with resentment about the down payment assistance, feeling that it had tainted her achievement of homeownership. At the same time, she was dealing with her own questions about whether the path she'd chosen was truly what she wanted or just what was expected of her. Sometimes, I wonder what I would have done if I'd had your courage, she confided during one of our slowly rebuilding sister conversations. I've never made a major decision without considering what everyone else would think. It's not too late, I told her. You can still choose courage. She eventually started a nonprofit providing medical care to underserved immigrant communities. Combining her medical skills with a passion for social justice, she'd never allowed herself to explore. The extended family's reaction ranged from genuine apology to stubborn denial. Uncle Vikram became one of my strongest supporters, often defending me in family gatherings when others made comments about my unconventional choices. Uncle Curran, whose daughter's wedding I had funded, maintained a respectful distance but made sure to thank me privately for making Priya's dream wedding possible. Some relatives, however, couldn't adjust to the new dynamic. They were uncomfortable with the revelation that the failure, had been the family's secret benefactor. A few stopped including me in gatherings entirely, preferring to maintain their original narrative rather than confront their own prejudices. I was surprisingly okay with this. I had learned that not everyone would be able to accept the full truth of who I was, and that was their limitation, not mine. 1 year after the wedding revelation, I was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine as one of 30 under 35 success stories. The article detailed my journey from dismissed art student to multi-million-dollar company founder, and it sparked conversations in immigrant communities across the country about the cost of rigid expectations and the value of supporting children's authentic dreams. My parents framed the magazine cover and hung it in the pharmacy, right next to Kavia's medical school graduation photo and Rohan's engineering degree. For the first time, I was represented in the family success gallery as myself, not as someone I was expected to become. The most unexpected outcome was meeting David Chen at a foundation fundraising event 6 months ago. He was a fellow entrepreneur who had built and sold a successful food tech company, and like me, he had spent years hiding his success from a family that had never understood his choices. You mean there are others like us? He joked during our first coffee date. People who made millions while their families worried they were throwing their lives away. More than you'd think, I replied. We should start a support group. We've been dating for 3 months now, and for the first time in my life, I'm in a relationship with someone who knows exactly who I am from day one. No pretending to be less successful, no hiding my ambitions, no downplaying my achievements to make someone else comfortable. He celebrates my success because he understands the courage it took to pursue an unconventional path. Last month, he met my parents for the first time. Instead of the usual interrogation about career and finances, my father asked him about his business strategy, and my mother showed him her latest paintings. The conversation flowed naturally, without undercurrents of judgment or worry about my future. I like him, Mom told me after he left, but more importantly, I like how you are when you're with him. You seem yourself. It was the greatest compliment she'd ever given me. 2 weeks ago, Priya called to tell me she was pregnant with her first child. During our conversation, she brought up something that surprised me. Maya, I want you to know that your speech at my wedding changed my life. Changed your life how? It made me realize I've been living for everyone else's approval too. After the wedding, I started thinking about what I actually wanted to do with my life, not what everyone expected me to do. She had been working as an accountant, a safe and respectable career that bored her to tears. Inspired by my example, she had started a side business as a wedding planner, using her organizational skills and cultural knowledge to help other Indian American couples navigate the complex logistics of traditional weddings. Your business is doing well. Better than well. I'm booked solid for the next 18 months, and I'm making more money doing something I love than I ever did as an accountant. I'm planning to quit my day job next month. What do your parents think? They're nervous, but they're trying to be supportive. They keep saying, if Maya can do it, maybe Priya can too. I had become the family example in a completely different way than I'd ever imagined. Today marks exactly 1 year since that fateful wedding speech. I'm sitting in my home studio, working on a painting that has nothing to do with business or profit, just pure creative expression for the joy of it. My phone buzzes with messages from family members sharing good news, asking for advice, or just checking in because they genuinely care about my life. The financial support I used to provide secretly has been replaced by something more valuable: authentic relationships built on mutual respect and honest communication. My family knows who I really am now, and while it took time, most of them have learned to celebrate rather than judge my unconventional path. I started this story by telling you that my family called me a failure for 10 years while I secretly funded their lifestyle. But that's not really what this story is about. This story is about the courage it takes to live authentically in a world that wants to put you in a box. It's about learning that respect cannot be bought, only commanded. It's about understanding that the people who truly love you will find a way to accept the real you, and those who can't accept the real you were never really loving you in the first place. The most important lesson I learned is this: hiding your success to make others comfortable is just another form of people pleasing that ultimately serves no one. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. My courage to reveal my true self eventually inspired others in my family to pursue their own authentic dreams. 6 months from now, David and I are planning to announce our engagement. Unlike past relationships where I worried about whether a partner would fit into my family's expectations, this time I'm excited to share our news. My parents already adore him, not because he checks boxes on some predetermined list, but because they can see how happy we make each other. We're planning a wedding that will be funded openly and celebrated authentically, without hidden benefactors or secret assistants. Just two people who found each other by having the courage to be exactly who they are. If you're watching this and struggling with family expectations that don't match your dreams, I want you to know your authentic success is worth more than anyone else's approval. The people who truly matter will find a way to celebrate your victories, even if they don't understand your path. The foundation now supports over 200 young entrepreneurs from traditional families. We've helped launch everything from sustainable fashion brands to tech startups to artisan food companies. Each success story reminds me why that painful moment at Priya's wedding was actually the greatest gift my family could have given me. It forced me to stop hiding and start living. Last week, I received a letter from a young woman named Samira, whose Pakistani parents wanted her to be a doctor. Instead, she used our grant to start a company that creates educational apps for refugee children. Her parents now volunteer for her organization and tell everyone proudly about their daughter, the entrepreneur. "You showed me that success has many faces," she wrote, "and that sometimes you have to disappoint people in the short term to inspire them in the long term." That letter sits framed on my desk next to a photo from last month's family gathering, the first one where I felt completely comfortable being myself. In the picture, I'm wearing a designer dress that clearly cost more than most people's rent, and my smile is genuinely radiant. My parents are beaming beside me, no longer embarrassed by their unconventional daughter, but proud of the woman who had the courage to forge her own path. But perhaps the most meaningful change is in how I'm raising my future children. David and I often talk about the family we want to create together, one where children are encouraged to explore their authentic interests, where success is defined by happiness and fulfillment rather than external validation, where love is never conditional on meeting predetermined expectations. I want our kids to know from day one that they're valued for who they are, not who we think they should become, David told me recently as we walked along the lakefront. And I want them to see us living authentically, so they never feel like they have to hide their true selves to earn love, I replied. The business world has changed for me too. No longer operating in secret or downplaying my achievements, I've become a sought-after speaker at entrepreneurship conferences. My keynote speech, "The Cost of Invisible Success," has been viewed over 2 million times online. The response from young people, particularly those from immigrant families, has been overwhelming. "You gave me permission to be proud of my unconventional choices," wrote one viewer. I stopped hiding my success from my family after watching your speech, shared another. You made me realize that making others comfortable isn't worth making yourself invisible, commented a third. These messages remind me daily that vulnerability and authenticity can be the greatest gifts we give to others. By sharing my story, I've inadvertently given others permission to share theirs. The financial impact on my family stabilized after about 6 months. Dad diversified the pharmacy business, focusing more on personalized customer service and community health programs rather than relying on large institutional contracts. The business is smaller now, but more sustainable and personally fulfilling for him. I learned something important, he told me during one of our recent coffee meetings. Building something that depends on factors you can't control is ultimately fragile, but building something based on your authentic value to your community, that lasts. Rohan's engineering career flourished, and he recently got promoted to lead a team developing accessibility technology. The experience of having to finance his final semester independently taught him financial responsibility and resilience that served him well in his career. I'm grateful the scholarship disappeared, he admitted recently. I needed to learn that I could solve my own problems. It made me more confident in everything else I do. Kavia's nonprofit has grown into a significant organization serving thousands of immigrant families across the Midwest. She recently received a humanitarian award from the State Medical Association, recognition that came from following her authentic passion rather than just climbing traditional career ladders. Watching you choose courage over comfort inspired me to do the same, she told me at the awards ceremony. I never realized how much of my life I was living for other people's approval until I saw what living for your own approval looked like. Even Uncle Vikram transformed his shame about the wedding incident into action. He started facilitating support groups for immigrant parents, helping them navigate the balance between preserving cultural values and supporting their children's individual dreams. I realized I wasn't just wrong about you, he explained during a family dinner. I was wrong about what it means to honor our culture. Real honor comes from raising children who are confident, successful, and happy, not from forcing them into boxes that don't fit. The extended family dynamics shifted as well. Some relatives who initially couldn't handle the revelation that the family failure was actually the most successful eventually came around. Others maintained their distance, apparently more comfortable with their original judgments than with the complex reality of my actual life. Surprisingly, I found peace with both reactions. The people who could grow and adapt became closer to me than ever. Those who couldn't taught me valuable lessons about accepting what I cannot control and focusing my energy on relationships that are mutual and genuine. One of the most unexpected developments was reconnecting with old friends from art school who had similar stories. We started an informal network we jokingly call the Secret Millionaires Club, successful entrepreneurs who had spent years downplaying their achievements to maintain family relationships or social acceptance. We're like a support group for people whose biggest problem is that they're too successful for their own families to handle, jokes my friend Marcus, who built a sustainable architecture firm while his family spent years worrying he'd starve as an artist. These friendships remind me that my experience wasn't unique. Many creative entrepreneurs struggle with family acceptance, and many successful people wrestle with the question of how much authenticity is worth when it comes at the cost of family harmony. The answer, I've learned, is that authenticity is always worth it in the long run, but the short-term costs can be significant, and not everyone is prepared to pay them. For me, the year following the wedding revelation was the most challenging and transformative of my life. I lost some relationships I had thought were solid, discovered hidden strengths in connections I had underestimated, and learned that love worth having is love that can withstand truth. Most importantly, I learned that respect cannot be earned through achievement alone. It must be claimed through the courage to present your authentic self to the world and accept nothing less than full recognition of your worth. Today, as I finish writing this story, I realize it's not really about revenge at all. It's about liberation. The moment I stopped funding my family's lifestyle wasn't punishment, it was freedom. freedom from the exhausting work of trying to earn love through service, freedom from the crushing weight of living a double life, freedom to discover which relationships could survive honesty and which were built on false foundations. The wedding speech that felt like an ending was actually a beginning. The beginning of authentic relationships, genuine respect, and the deep satisfaction that comes from being loved for exactly who you are. If you're struggling with family expectations that don't match your authentic self, I want you to remember this. You don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself to make them comfortable. Your success, your choices, your happiness, these things don't need to be hidden to preserve others' feelings. The people who truly love you will find a way to celebrate your authentic victories. And those who can't, well, they were never really loving the real you anyway. Sometimes the greatest act of love you can show your family is refusing to enable their refusal to see you clearly. Sometimes you have to stop doing things for them before they can start appreciating things about you. And sometimes the family disappointment turns out to be the family's greatest success story. She just needed the courage to let everyone see it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that their authentic success is worth celebrating, not hiding. And remember, you deserve to be loved for exactly who you are, not for who you think others want you to be. The truth will always set you free. It just might surprise you who's willing to be free with you.